The IEnumerable of T interface is wonderful, and there's other generic interfaces in the system.collections.generic namespace that you might want to take advantage of at some point. Just like all of the buffers that we're building, they all implement an iBuffer of T interface. Every collection class that we already looked at in the last module on generic collections, they all implement an interface that is an abstraction of the concrete class that we looked at. For example, there is an iListOfT interface. This interface is implemented by ListOfT and SortedListOfT, and it's an interface that you can also use if you want to build your own custom data structure and allow client code to access the data structure using an indexer. So something that implements iListOfT allows me to say list sub 0 to get to the first item in the list. iListOfT also forces me to provide add, remove, and insert methods to manipulate the list. Now you can also use this interface if you just want to pass a collection to some other code and not let the code know what type of list it is using. It might be using a list of T or a sorted list of T or your custom data structure, but it doesn't have to know. All of that can be hidden behind the iListOfT interface. There's also an iCollectionOfT interface. This interface abstracts away add, remove, and search capability. There's no indexing, but there is add and remove and search, the search being provided by a contains method. The list, the dictionary, the hash set, they all implement iCollectionOfT. Now the dictionary has its own special interface, iDictionary of T key and T value, which I'll call the generic type parameters here K and V, K for key and V for value, just to make it shorter and fit on the slide, but that's syntactically legal if I want to declare a type like that in C#. Remember, we don't have to prefix these generic type parameters with a T, so iDictionary of K and V, perfectly legal. I can use this interface if I want to hide something that allows clients to access values by key. There's also a read-only collection of T interface. This is implemented by list and dictionary, and it means that I can take a list and I can pass it to someone else who takes that list as an iRead-only collection of T parameter. When someone has a read-only collection, they can only enumerate through it, use a for each loop, or they can get a count of the items inside. There is no add or remove functionality exposed through this interface, so it's one way to allow me to pass a collection to someone else and make sure that they don't change it. There's also iSetOfT. That's an interface describing the set-based operations that we looked at, operations like unions and intersections. That's implemented by HashSetOfT. And then there's two more special interfaces defined in system.collections.generic. There's iCompareOfT and iEqualityCompareOfT. These interfaces are not implemented by any of the collections directly. Instead, they're used by the collections to compare objects. Remember, some collections need to make comparisons to put things in the proper sort order, or in the case of the hash set, to make sure things are unique. And that's a topic that we touched on in the last module. You might remember we got stuck trying to figure out how to make a hash set compare employees by name. Well, let's revisit that topic now that we know a little more about generic interfaces.